Yeah, first of all, it's great to see everybody. I haven't seen you guys probably since the bowl game. First, would love to start by just wishing Coach Cook the best. He came and spoke to the team when we first got here. He's been a great friend to me. He's helped me a ton. Comes to practice. Is always there for us whenever we need anything. So when you have a chance to be around the best, when you have a chance to be around greats, it only makes you better. And so I was obviously sad but excited for him to hear that news the other day. To me, our women's volleyball program, I think it's such an amazing feature for our university. As I go all across the country, there's not a person that doesn't bring up the game in Memorial Stadium. As I'm recruiting for football, their families know the excellence of Nebraska many times because of our volleyball team. So what he's done is amazing, and I think we all know that. And want to welcome Danny Busboom Kelly here. I obviously don't know her, but I had a chance to visit with her the other day briefly over text, and look forward to getting to know her. And she's obviously elite at what she does, so the greatness will continue. With that, I know you guys probably have questions for me. I'll go ahead and get started.
Matt, where are you at with your special teams position on your staff right now?
It's not filled yet. That position probably won't be a recruiting position, so we're doing some interviews and taking our time.
Back to Cook for a second. I'm sure this was true, obviously, at Baylor and Temple. But, coaches at universities, they're a family all their own. You guys are kind of experiencing similar things. So when you lose somebody and they, retire, how hard is that just on the group of coaches that coach all the teams?
Yeah, I think to your point, especially in a place like Nebraska, there's a shared not just responsibility, but we all understand each other. We all understand the pressures of these jobs, the opportunities, all the great things that come with it. And so, when I see Fred Hoiberg, I have a special relationship with him that only him and I probably can understand. When I see Amy, I probably have that same thing, Coach Manning. And so, and Coach Cook's right there, it's those people, after you lose a game you thought you were going to win, it's those people who usually text you, it's those people who usually pick you up because they understand just how hard coaching is and how hard building a program is. And so, you hate that. I thought, at the end of the day, when you get to be, you get to be in this business, at first you're trying to build something as a young coach. And at some point you start thinking about impact and legacy and all those things. And, when you saw, I thought the two videos I saw, first of all, for Coach Cook, to leave the program to a player who played for him. What an amazing impact, and then, saw him walking off the court and, Harper walking up and hugging him. And so just, over all these different years, at the end of the day, our true impact as coaches is on the people we coach. And so, talk about leaving a place better than you found it, which is a foundational element of what we believe in. He's the epitome of that. So happy for him. I'll miss seeing him at practice. I'll miss those things. But he did tell me he'd be around, so maybe he'll be more available to us, and I'm not getting on a horse, but I'll go visit him.
Hey, Matt, in addition to the coordinator hire on special teams, what else this offseason is your focus in that area of the program?
In terms of coaching, you're saying, or?
In terms of special teams, like you mentioned at the bowl game, an overhaul of that part of the team. You, of course, got players from the portal in that area. But what are you hoping to accomplish in special teams before you get to August?
Yeah, I think, again, I'm always very protective of our players, but I'll be quite honest. I think even in the interviews, I don't think anything we did wrong was wrong schematically last year. I think a lot of our problems stem at the snapper position. And once that happens, you're trying to compensate for things. And I love those guys, but it just was not a good year from that perspective. And so, you think about, scheme, you think about all these things, but really at the end of the day, it comes down to technique and fundamentals. And so when something at the very core is not right, then the elements all around it aren't right. And so, I would love to go from being, I look at special teams like you're either, net neutral where you're not winning or losing the game on it, or you're losing the game on it or winning it. And you think back to Wisconsin, which was a great game for us. We played really well on special teams. Opening kickoff, 60 yards. We made some plays on special teams, and all of a sudden it opened the game up. I don't think we can put any more time into it in terms of practice. I don't think we can put any more time in terms of meetings. I think our roster this year will be better than our roster last year. That's just the building of the program, and so I think you'll see some of that. But I think really this, whoever's going to lead it is a main focus, and then the decision, that we did to go out and get a punter and a snapper, and then obviously Aiden coming back should hopefully correct the problem that was there last year.
What do you like in particular about, you mentioned McAllister and Gallick, and could Andrew Marshall be a return option too?
Yeah, I think that we have a lot of guys who can probably return. I think the big thing is probably the battery, like the kicker, Tristan getting healthy. I think John, when given the opportunity with a good snap hold, he was excellent as the year went on. So we'll have, I think, two excellent kickers. Camden is here as a punter, who we think is a really, really talented young player. And then, you bring two players in with experience, right? They have reps. And, while snapping at New Hampshire might be a little different than snapping at Nebraska, really at the core of it, it's the same, right? Like the ball's going back the same distance, the same speed. And so we erred on the side of production and went out and found guys we thought would be really reliable. And so, again, just trying to address it with players, trying to address it with the leadership in the room, trying to address it with emphasis and having a fresh new lens, set of eyes. A lot of the guys that we've interviewed have just asked, hey, what do you see? And just trying to see a different perspective. And then Phil Snow, as we've gone through these interviews, he's really leading a lot of the interviews for me. So I'm in the room, but he's asking things again from a maybe different perspective than I have. I think you guys will find that I trust Phil immensely, because it always goes back to the same core values of technique, fundamentals, effort, preparation, and so just looking at everything from that perspective.
Coach Troy Dannon said the other day that April 26th there will be something here. Are you able to say at this point whether or not there will be any form of scrimmage that day?
Yeah, I don't know that yet, but I'll be honest with you, I highly doubt it. And I think it's really fundamentally, I hate to say it like this, it's really because, last year we're one of the more televised. We were one of the more televised spring games, and I dealt with a lot of people offering our players a lot of opportunities after that. So to go out and bring in a bunch of new players and then showcase them for all the other schools to watch, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just absolute free, open, common market, and so I don't necessarily want to open up to the outside world. I don't want these guys all being able to watch our guys and say, "Wow, he looks like a pretty good player. Let's go get him." So, but I don't know yet. I don't know anything. I thought it was important that we at least started to broach that subject of it not being televised. Yet at the same time, I do want to show off our players in some way. So, what exactly it'll be yet? I have not worried about anything other than recruiting right now, both the portal and into the 26 class. So now I have to kind of turn my attention to all those things.
How much does roster size and injuries play a factor into that as well?
Well, I think injuries are a factor, but we're still going to scrimmage in the spring. We're still going to tackle in the spring. But, last spring game was really unfortunate, right? We lost D. Bell, who we thought was probably going to be one of our best receivers, to a non-contact injury on the turf, and then, or semi-contact, I guess. And then Bly Hill, who we thought was going to be our starting corner, and then those guys never quite came around. And so, when you have 150, there's some attrition. And, when you have 105 and guys are being compensated now and you're putting money behind some people, it's a whole other set of parameters. Yet at the same time, you have to get good. And honestly, to me, it's about protecting the roster and protecting through that portal period. So we'll see. It's I hear all kinds of things about they might change this portal period, that portal period. So I think I have to just be really flexible right now.
You mentioned Demetrius Bell, him, Corcoran, Prohaska. How are they going along?
Yeah, Turner had surgery. Just that was a hamstring that just never quite healed. So he had to have surgery from a specialist a couple weeks ago. So we're hopeful that he'll be back at some point. Teddy Prohaska's, he's right on pace. Demetrius is a little bit behind, but trending in the right direction. So we think he'll be full go this summer. I think those guys are doing a good job in the training room.
Are there any other, I guess, as you go through the winter and spring injuries or notable guys who will be out for a while?
Yeah, I don't know that I mean, like, Gunnar had his shoulder done. Lutoski had surgery. We had a lot of guys have surgery. Carter Nelson had surgery. I said Gunnar, Lutoski. Canuck had surgery, but should be back for the spring. So, I mean, kind of the run-of-the-mill, postseason, a lot of, laborals and stuff like that.
Opportunity for some young offensive linemen to have a big spring if all those guys might be recovering.
Yeah, no, I mean, even in the portal, I mean, you might find a guy here or there, like a one-year guy, but like to win in college football, you're gonna have to grow your own offensive linemen, and so we've recruited a lot of really good young players that have gone through the rhythm of like redshirting and then kind of being a backup, and now it's their time to make their move, right? They have all the opportunities they want this spring, and I'm excited to see them. Guys like even last year, the guys we signed last year, Preston, Grant Bricks, those guys in the bowl game were in the two deep, and so it'll be their chance this spring to go out there and either be starters or be, in the two deep and show what they can do. There's a lot of guys that have spent a year or 2 years in the weight room, and now they'll have an opportunity.
Center? Like, kind of who your center might be at this point?
I think there's a lot of guys who could do it. We have Sam Sledge, we have Jason Machachak, Justin Evans has always gone over there. So Donnie will do a good job of putting the best five guys out there. But I think one of the main things for our guys is like not to forecast things. Obviously you heard me talk a lot about let's not forecast our record next year, and let's not forecast the lineups right now. Like let them all go compete. I think what'll start to creep into football is as you start to, which makes sense, right? As you start to put finances and revenue sharing behind players, it's all automatically assumed that, this guy's getting paid this, then he's going to be the starter. And that, while you expect that to happen, we're never going to operate off that. The best players are going to play. And so most times you're compensated for not what you're going to do, but what you've done. I mean, I can tell you last year, some of the more highly compensated players on this team via NIL didn't play, and some of the less compensated players did. And that's just, that's just football. So all of our guys are going to have an opportunity this spring to either battle for the 105 or battle to be a starter. And it'll be a long physical season next year. So if there are two, they have to be ready to be a one. You look at what happened to us last year with Turner and Teddy, and all of a sudden Gunner's a starter. So, all of our guys have to have that rhythm.
Those three pretty important guys up front on defense. How do you feel, just generally speaking, about the personnel on the defensive line?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really going to be hard to replace a guy like Ty Robinson. I think he's, I went down to Mobile and watched him and talked to people with him. I mean, he's just an absolute dude. He's a freak, difference maker, athlete, tough guy, competitor. Nash, he went to the East-West game and put on a show, and he's big, physical. MJ did an amazing job for us of setting the edge and playing hard, and then Jamari had production at times. So, we'll have to replace those guys. But, that's going to be the same thing year after year after year. I feel good about the guys we have. I think we brought some guys in, but the guys that were on the roster last year, the Keonas, the Riley Van Poppel, Cam Lenhart, they've been waiting for their turn. And we play a lot of guys on the defensive line. I think we have an excellent defensive line coach coming in. Phil's going to do a great job as the edge coach, and we'll be good enough to win up front.
Phil coach which guys?
Phil will coach the outside backers, the edge players, and Terry will coach the inside guys.
As you put together, as you start to pencil together, just not the names, but the numbers, the position breakdown of how a 105 will look, you've obviously done it at the NFL level with a 53-man roster, and it's basically twice the size. Is it as simple as like you have twice the same number of offensive linemen, twice the same number of quarterbacks, defensive linemen, or is it different in college because of the ages and development level of the players?
It's a great question. I think the first thing you do is operate off the first 53, which we actually tweaked to 57 because, college football is a little different. So, we have, our first 57, which is built exactly off of an NFL roster, right? So, when I say 57, we're always going to think about three quarterbacks instead of two because you probably have three on scholarship. So, just a couple tweaks here and there. And then after that, I think you want to start to have, the semblance of a second 53, but it's really the first team of that. And then as you get to the bottom 10 guys, if that makes sense, between 95 and 105, I won't get caught up in, To me, there's going to be guys that bring a lot to the culture of the team. There's going to be guys that are flexible at practice, like Roman Mangini. Whether he could be a starter next year or he could be, I don't know, but he's going to be on the team because there's no one that makes practice go better than Roman Mangini. I mean, he's out there catching balls on the scout team, spiking them, just raising the level of everything around us. And so, to me, that last group. And I don't even know how it's going to work yet. I mean, honest to goodness, I don't even know how the 105. I've been told that we think it'll be the day of the first game, so you might go into camp with more. And if a guy's out for the year, he won't count in the 105, so you can replace him with someone else. But it has to be before that first game. So I've had lots of players who, we made a conscious decision to tell every guy on the team if we did the 105 right now, would they make it or not? So they had a chance to move on. And some guys have moved on and they found spots, which I'm really happy for. Some guys have left as walk-ons here and gotten a scholarship somewhere else, which is great. But some guys have said, Coach, I'm staying here until you guys, kick me off like I'm a Husker. And that's hard for me to sit there and say, well, they're not going to make the 105. So we'll compete it out all the way to the end and see how the numbers play out. Maybe if we have 115 in camp. Right now we're, I think, at like 130. So we still have not reduced it all the way down. But I'm going to give everyone the chance this spring to try to make the team and see how the numbers play out.
How many scholarships? So, the 85 now, what do you anticipate the in-house number to be in the new model?
Yeah, I don't know that yet. And again, because the settlement's not ratified all the way through, but I think there's going to be some, different ways in which you can help guys pay for school, via revenue sharing or not. So I think most of our guys will, a good portion of our guys, more than 85, will probably have some way of paying for school. Sort of like, some guys have taken some of their NIL money to pay for their classes, last year. I think there'll be some ways that we can do that. So what exactly the number will be yet, I think is going to be left up. There's a certain pot of money, and as coaches, we have to decide how to divvy that up as best we can. And, there's some guys that I'd love to help them pay for school so that they can, leave here debt-free as opposed to something else.
So how many guys can you carry for spring?
There's no limit on spring.
So how many do you anticipate
For this spring for you guys?
I think it's like 130 right now.
126.
126.
What is the significance in your mind of getting Javen Wright and Singleton back?
Yeah, Deshaun had like a third round grade. Like he was East-West and probably was going to go to the Senior Bowl. So when that ruling passed, he was, he had a decision to make. I was like, hey, go take your shot at the pros. That's kind of always my deal. But I think Deshaun was really reasonable in that, you think about his rhythm. Like he played at junior college and he came here and didn't really play very much, and then played 4 games for us last year, the previous year, and then was hurt from that Michigan game all the way till July. So he said, Coach, I went out there and I played. This is my first full season. I didn't even have an off season, and if they're saying I'm a third round pick, if I come back and do this again, I'll have the same. Hopefully, I'll have the same results that Ty had, knowing that there's always a risk of coming back. But he's having a good experience. He told me he likes Lincoln. His younger brother's on the team, and I think he feels like with JB. I think he felt like he could really develop. And then obviously now we bring in Addy, but he's familiar with JB. So that's awesome. I mean, he's a really good player that's going to be an even better player next year, and he'll be a leader on the team and help bring all that together. And then the second person you asked me about was Javen. Well, Javen. Obviously having the blood clots. I think for him at the next level, if he can figure out a way to practice a couple days a week, and prove to the NFL teams that, hey, I can practice a couple days a week, then he'll have a shot because he's definitely a pro player in terms of his talent. So we're hoping that, as we work with the doctors, that in next fall he'll be able to practice and then play. Like this year, he literally just walked through and then played in the games. And I think his game will elevate if he can practice some more. So, for me, I always feel good about the fact that they want to be here and they feel like this place is making them better. Like we have a junior day. I'm going to leave here and go up there, and all I'm going to talk about is if you come here, you'll get developed. We had some guys that got paid by other schools because we developed them and they went and got paid. So, I take pride in that. I really do. So if they feel that way, it makes me feel good.
McCullough in the dunk contest the other night. What about him and Watson Trent sort of stood out in the process as guys you wanted to add?
Well, I think McCullough, I mean, he's just an absolutely great athlete that people have tried in a lot of different spots. And so you see kind of like a player who hasn't really found his home. And so, as we think about really less 3-3-5, though it's still, we're kind of a hybrid last year of we could be 3-4, we could be 3-3-5, or we could go to 4 down and rush. I think McCullough gives you someone who can play in all three of those packages, right? He can be an outside backer, edge player, come off the edge, play in the 3-3-5, play in the 3-4, and then also be a pass rusher from 4 down. So we have to take his athleticism, we have to add some bulk to him so that he can withstand rushing the edge, and then hope that translates, and I think it will. Son of a coach, he's had a lot of production. Donnie talked about when he was in Indiana playing against him 2 years ago and how productive he was. So that's one. And then, Marcus, 3 years, when you have the amount of production he had in 3 years and the way that he plays, I think he's a guy like his linebacker coach, his head coach, and the strength coach at Georgia Southern was here with us, and they all stood up for him. He's a guy that just wanted to go do it at the next level up, come up to the Power 5, come to the Big 10, Power 4, come to the Big 10. And when he was here on his visit, he asked all the right questions. He's about football. And if you take a one-year player, it's like in the NFL, guys get a 1 year to prove it. They have 1 year to prove, they deserve a big contract. Some of these guys are saying, I got 1 year to come to Nebraska, prove I can play in the Big 10. He's not a big linebacker. He's an athletic linebacker. So if he can play in this play style that we're going to face in the Big 10, then I think he'll help himself immensely at the next level. So both guys, they've had production. Both guys have 1 year to get it done, and they're very serious about it.
Is there something in particular you're looking for in those interviews? Because it's a condensed amount of time to decide on a portal prospect if he fits for you. When you're talking to him, like you mentioned, Watson Trent asking the right questions.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of structure here, and sometimes a lot of young players push back on it, which I get, right? The older players, sometimes they come in and when I say by structure, it's like, hey, you have to get up and eat breakfast every day. And sometimes the guys come from a school that, they don't have 21 meals served by a chef, and they're like, wait, you're gonna feed me? Like I don't have to eat ramen noodles? So there's a level of I can handle anything. I can handle guys who make mistakes. I can handle guys who lose their cool and yell at me. I just can't handle a lack of gratitude. I can't handle guys who are ungrateful. And so that's why the bowl was so fun, because some people left, and the guys that were at the bowl trip all wanted to be on the bowl trip. We had fun together because everyone was grateful to be a Husker. They were grateful to have all the things that we have. And so when guys come to visit and they treat people well and they're grateful and all those things, then the talent speaks for itself. But I'm looking for that other piece. There's other guys, when they've left, we said, hey, this isn't going to be a fit. We had one player who was coming here, and just as he was dealing with people, it just wasn't a great fit. So we're not going to ruin the locker room over one guy. And so I think that's the biggest thing for me, is trying to evaluate, why are you coming here? What are you leaving? And what do you really want to do? The second part I'll say is sometimes you have some younger players, right, who went somewhere and it didn't work out, and they're coming here, and then you have to figure out why. And then again, there's a compensation piece to it now, right? There's some guys you're going to take risks on. There's some guys you have to really invest in, and you have to really be diligent and not chase.
How competitive do you feel like you guys were in the portal? I'm sure there were players that you didn't get, and there were players that you really wanted and got that other teams didn't get. But generally speaking, when you think about what you were able to offer, with this building and NIL and rev share, how competitive did you feel going through the process, getting the players that you got?
Yeah, I think anybody we lost to when it was straight up, so the world we're living in now, right? If I offer you $50 and offer you $500, they're probably going to go there, right? So we have to make different valuations based upon what we have. But when things were straight up, if we lost someone, we lost them to a program that we want to be in the same conversation with, right? So I think that's happening in recruiting too. We are in the conversation now with some schools that we want to be in the conversation with. So I think we did an excellent job. You can't underestimate. Revenue sharing hasn't started, so to get guys here, just a tremendous investment by the Pede family in 1890 and all the people who give to 1890, because what everyone's done is they basically all surged ahead this spring. It's people have spent, I know schools have spent a ton of money on this spring, and we have too, to get the roster to where you have a chance to get to rev share. So, 1890 has been amazing to us, and that's allowed us to be competitive. I think we all saw in the college football playoff the people who spent the most got the most. I mean, I've been saying that since I got here, and it's kind of real, right? So, and so, I think we're competitive, and I think the building. I mean, if you come here and visit, the building is really good. And even in normal recruiting now, like I'm in high schools now and I'm talking to players, and it's maybe the third time they've seen me in their high school, and they've been here 5 times. I mean, it wasn't like I was in college football and got here. Like I was in the NFL, so I didn't necessarily know all these guys. We'll start to really, I think over the next couple of years, the conversation about what's Lincoln like will be less and less and less the more we get people on campus, get people to our camps, hopefully build some other things to get people into Lincoln, and that news will just go forward. And so now I'm on the road. People are saying like, oh, I saw the Colorado game. Oh, I saw the volleyball game. The more things we do, the big moments like that we capitalize on, we'll move up in recruiting, and then we got to win. At the end of the day, like we got to win, so that people want to be a part of a winner.
What is your role in raising funds for your roster?
In terms of like for 1890 or something like that?
Yeah, or just,
Yeah, because the revenue share is we're different than a lot of schools are having to raise their revenue share. I've talked to a lot of coaches. They're writing $14 million checks, of which they got about half right now, and they're trying to figure out a way to get to the money. The great thing about a young person, if they come to Nebraska, is like we don't take money from the students. Like this is all through our budget, and so it's sustainable. A lot of other schools, rev share is not going to be sustainable, so they can float a big number now and disappoint a kid later. We feel like we can just stand on business, like, hey, this is what we said and this is what we're going to do. In terms of for 1890, I'm kind of there as called. Like, when they have an event, I go. If they want me to talk to somebody, I do. I think it's really important that people hear some of the stories. I mean, you guys walk through the parking lot, you don't see like Lamborghinis and Ferraris out there. Like our guys aren't, our guys are investing in their futures and very often taking care of people back home. And but that's probably the extent of it. Really, I mean, Troy's kind of a leader, I think, in college athletics in that realm, so he does a lot of it.
You just look back at the last month with recruiting, transfer visits, roster decisions, everything going on. How busy was that, and what do you think of the job your staff did to get that period?
Yeah, well, certainly no one wants to be like, woe is us, right? Because we have the greatest job in the world. But, I mean, a tremendous job by the staff. I mean, we played Saturday, the 28th. We flew home that night. I think I got up and did laundry on Sunday, and then we were in the office Monday morning. There was no break. There was some of the auxiliary staff, but like Corey Campbell, Kristen Coggan, like they were in the office for portal visits starting on the 1st. So, we've worked straight through, and it's a collective effort, right? You may hear me say all the time, it's the restaurants in Lincoln, it's Sid Dillon, it's our ticket office, our compliance office is, I think, one of the best I've ever been around. Patty, Gina, Sarah, they found not ways around things, but they're creative in this new world to help us get to where we need to get to. So it's a lot of people, right? It's the Kindler Hotel. It's just so many people that go out of their way to help us in this process. I think I ate at Aragon like 14 out of like 16 nights at one point. I could curate the menu, you know what I mean? And so, but you walk in and Mark's there and he's like, hey, welcome. And people they feel the energy of Lincoln. And so, it's a lot of people. We've been on the road. You can hear my voice is still gone. Last week, I got up Monday morning at like 5. We flew to Miami. Then we stayed in Miami the night. Then we went to Atlanta. Then I went and spoke in Alabama. Then we flew to Chicago, did Chicago. And then we got back Friday at like 5. And then Saturday morning, Julie's like 5:15. She's like, the girls have basketball and a volleyball tournament, so get your butt up. And so that was probably harder than being on the road. But, it's our job. And we're not going to win here without working. Nothing comes from not working. And so, but it's not really me. It's Susan, it's Wish, it's all the people in the building that are just bending over backwards, because there has to be a balance of, we have to recruit really well, but the way we'll win is developing the players that are in the program. And so, it's Dennis LeBlanc. It's all those people that do a great job for our staff. And so, but I'm going to give these guys, we'll take a couple days off here. Corey's running the program for the first 4 weeks. We just believe in strength for the first 4 weeks. So people will take a little time off these next 2 weeks probably, and then we'll get back and start the mat drills and get into spring football.
What more are you asking from Dylan Riola this winter as a leader? Before he throws another pass next season, how much can he and how much does he have to grow in making this his team?
Well, before he can make it his team, I think he has to make it his offense. And before he makes it his offense, I think he has to make it like his receiving core. And so, I think it's, him this morning being here at 9, or 8 or whatever time working out and leading those guys. And so, I went to the Supernova game last night and he's over there with Heinrich and they're sitting courtside, which is great as long as you're in the building this morning throwing, which I knew they were. And so I think when you see, your best players, and Dylan's certainly one of our best players, when you see them paying the price each and every day, and that's what I mean by gratitude. Like, I'm grateful to be here. So because I'm grateful, it's not that I say thank you, it's that I work my tail off each and every day because I'm trying to get better. So yeah, Dylan's got to get the receivers there every day. Year one, you're like, I asked them, 5 guys showed up. Well, that's not leadership. That's trying to be a leader. Leadership is when you get everybody there. And I think he'll do a great job at that. At the same time, mastering himself, getting quicker, getting his weight to the proper weight, continuing to learn the offense, mastering his fundamentals. And, now we have 2 other quarterbacks in there with him, mentoring TJ, mentoring Marco, and just in terms of what we do. And obviously Jalen Gramstad came back, which is awesome because he'll be a great vet for there.
What's the proper weight?
What's that?
What's the proper
Oh, you didn't get me to say that. My weight?